Hey guys, welcome to this video and my channel. My name is Heather. I am the owner and creator here at Wicked Whiskey Designs, and today we are doing ink swirls. How freaking pretty. I am a hardcore parkour lover of all things hot pink chunky, so I absolutely love this cup. This is a very easy technique to do. It is not hard. It might take a little bit of practice, but I am here to show you exactly how to make this cup so that you can go and make one too, because everyone should have a cup like this. All of the products that I use are linked in the description box below, so if there's anything you're curious about, definitely check out that section, and there very well could be a coupon code or two down there for you to help save a little bit of money. If you are new to this channel, please consider liking and subscribing. I have a ton of content on its way. This is somewhat of a newer channel, but I'm trying to bust out 2 videos a week, so there's a lot. There's a list like this long, so definitely hit like and subscribe. That way you are definitely going to be notified of when all that new content drops down. And don't leave before checking out the tips and tricks section at the end of this video. The tips and the tricks section is where I share with you all of the tips and tricks I've learned along the way, because I've made all the mistakes. All the tips and tricks I share with you so that you can make a cup like this as easy and perfect as possible the first time around. It's a little more chill, a little more casual. I kind of ramble sometimes, but there's a lot of information there that's going to help you to make the perfect cup when it comes to alcohol ink swirls. I think that pretty much wraps up this intro. I'm going to go ahead and get started, show you everything you need to make this cup. Let's go have some fun. Hey guys, what are we doing this week? Okay, so listen, I think what we're gonna do this week is alcohol ink. You know, alcohol ink on a tumbler, especially if you have a glitter base, they come out so freaking pretty. And there's like all sorts of little tricks to it, and so that, just full disclosure, full warning, like the tips and tricks section might be a little lengthy this week, but honestly, they're just so much fun. And they're not hard. It's just kind of, you know, learning the mojo, getting a vibe for it, a little bit of practice maybe, and off you go. Now, I know that I do have another epoxy, another alcohol ink tumbler on the channel. I think it's the rainbow tumbler. You know, that was probably like my second video that I ever did on this channel. So it's one of those things that'll be fun to kind of compare. This is what you did when you first started. Look how stiff you are, and you're trying to be very, you know, in line. And now I'm like, what's up? Evolution. Anyway, so a lot of the same tips and tricks are probably going to get mentioned as they were in that initial video, but honestly, I don't think you could have too many videos when it comes to these things. Alcohol inks are so much fun to do. They really, really are. And, you know, there is a little bit of a learning curve to them. There are little things you need to learn. You know, how much epoxy to have on the cup. You know, what happens if you set your cup on fire? Because I've done that. Matter of fact, last week I did that twice because I was having a really bad day. You know, there's little things, okay, as there are with anything. But I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to, as you see, I don't have a cup in my hand. We are going to, I think, do a 30 skinny because I'm probably going to steal this one for myself. We're going to do a 30 skinny. We're going to spray paint it, probably a berry. The glitter I want to add on the cup is kind of like a dark magenta. So, I mean, honestly, it could be either be a black base or like a berry colored base. I'll see what I have at this point. And then we're going to go ahead, we're going to add the epoxy to it. We're going to add glitter, a couple more runs of epoxy to make sure everything is reasonably smooth, and then we're going to start adding some inks. And I'm thinking what we're going to add is like purple. Now, okay, I am that person, I have to be honest, I am not a fan of purple and pink together. It just is not my vibe at all. Like, it's just, it's just not me. Except for this cup, okay? Because this is a color combination that a customer asked me to do for her, and I just loved, L-O-V-E-D, loved how they came out. So we're going to try to replicate that cup and those colors. If not the exact colors, something very close. So, and in that, the pink and the purple just all worked. And for a girl that doesn't like pink and purple, if it works for me, it's going to work for everybody. So we're going to add some pinks, some purples, some blacks, some whites, and make the swirl all delicious and lovely. And that's what we're working on. So I'm going to go find a cup somewhere around here, and we're going to go get started. Yay. Once your spray painted cup is dry, move it to your epoxy spinner and mix up approximately 20 mLs of your favorite epoxy, and using a gloved hand, apply it to your cup. I apologize for the lighting in this segment, but go ahead and apply your glitter to your wet epoxy and try to make it as smooth as possible, and absolutely go for full coverage. All right. So we've got our glitter on there. You cannot possibly see in this video how pretty this glitter is, but I promise you'll see it tomorrow. It's gorgeous. We're going to go ahead and let this spin. We are then going to, when this is cured, we're going to apply a coat of epoxy to this. We're going to probably apply a second coat of epoxy to this, depending on how much that first coat covers and makes this. It doesn't need to be perfectly smooth, but smooth-ish. I can see here where there's a couple spots where like the glitter didn't 100% cover. I don't care about that because honestly, the majority of this is going to get swirled and, you know, covered with ink anyway. So I'm not worried about that. And we can obviously kind of control that narrative a bit if we need to. I do not ever try to like glitter the heck out of the bottom of these. When this is done, before the next run of epoxy, we will bottom out that the bottom with glitter, and I'll show you how I do that. But for now, we're going to let that run and let the wind hopefully not blow the cup away. Good morning. Okay, so we are on day 2. Let me tell you, my schedule is completely out of whack. Like, I completely lost track of days. Today is Friday. Our video is supposed to be showing tomorrow. We are not prepared. So we're going to try to bang this cup out in one day. Is it completely not possible? No, it's 100% possible. God bless and all hail Facet. So we're going to go ahead and work on this. It's bright and early. I have coffee. This is where we're at. The hair is looking especially bird's nesty today. It's all good. Now, yesterday, I do apologize for that video where we were putting the glitter on the cup. Out of nowhere, it was like I video these right by the garage door so that you can see and there's light. Out of nowhere, there were like gusts of wind, like, you know, tropical storm level here. So it was blowing my glitter everywhere. It was blowing everything everywhere. So I apologize that you couldn't see exactly how pretty that cup is. Can you see it now? You still can't really see it that great. It's really very bright. I'll take it. You know what? You want to go outside? Let's go outside. Hold on a minute. Come outside. Let's do it. Now you can see it. Super purpley, super bright, absolutely gorgeous. This is an absolutely gorgeous glitter. Now, our problem is we have got nothing on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead, find the glitter that's going to match. I don't have, this is one of those colors, I don't have a corresponding fine glitter to it. So I'm going to go through my little, you know, my collection and see, and then we're going to go ahead, bottom this cup, get it running first thing so that we can finish this all in one day. Love these tutorials, don't you? Okay, and if you're wondering why I'm just not using the glitter that I have on the cup on the bottom, 2 things. Number 1, I have that much left. That much. And for chunky glitter, something like that, I'm going to hit it with spray adhesive. I'm going to add glitter. It's easily going to need a second pass. And honestly, I don't think I have a second pass in there. Number 2, chunky glitter on the bottom of cups drives me, I hate it. I love it. It's gorgeous. Let's put that out there. But I hate it because it's just adding extra, it's adding extra ass to this cup. I cannot tell you probably if there is one mistake or one hiccup that comes up when it comes to doing these tumblers that drives me absolutely batshit crazy, it's when you have a wobbly bottom. Okay, not the little, you know, when it has like a little foot at the bottom. You know, here's your epoxy, here's a little foot. The actual wobbly bottom, oh my God, that drives me absolutely freaking crazy because depending on the style of cup, that is such a headache to try to fix. And my spinners are old. They're little workhorses. I don't think there's one even spinner out here. So, you know, when I do cups, it's something that I have to be very mindful of. I have to police. I have to, you know, make sure that there aren't, you know, feet and, you know, what we call like little feet at the top and the bottom. If there is, you know, I got to sand them off, etc., etc. So I try to be very mindful. When it comes to these kind of ink style cups, you're moving that epoxy around so much on your cup that it's very easy for it to, you know, to end up with like a wobbly bottom. Adding chunky glitter into the mix of that is just compounding the issue. You know what I mean? It's just, it's a mess. And like I said, I don't think I have enough. So I went through my collection. Figgy is probably too dark. Nurple is too bright. This is Hopeless Romantic by Peachy. It's going to be close enough. It's one of those things where if you don't glitter the bottom, when you swirl your ink will only cover 20%. And then you'll have like a naked bottom that you've got to go problem solve and figure out how to fix. If you do cover it, the ink will cover 100%. So we're going to hedge our bets. We're going to sit there and use a little Hopeless Romantic, and we're going to move on because, like I said, it's very early, but it's going to be fun. So let's go do that. So there's literally nothing fancy about how I do this. Take my glitter, big old pile, hit the bottom of my cup with spray adhesive, dump the bottom into the glitter, and you move it all around, knock off any excess. Done. Hit it with spray sealer. We'll send it to epoxy. Get this going. Okay, so we have glitter on the bottom. We've hit it with spray sealer. We're going to stop right here for one little thing. I've worked with this glitter before, so I know that it works well with my epoxy, but this is where I need to also caution you. If you are using, you know, it doesn't seem to happen very much, if ever, with fine glitter. It seems to be a chunky glitter situation. If you are working with a glitter that you've never used in an epoxy method manner, stop here and spray your entire cup down with spray sealer. And this is why. Again, it seems to happen only with chunky glitter, at least for me. I use amazing glitter. Amazing glitter, and I love my epoxy. But there are glitters that I don't know if it's like a coating on the glitter, a way that they make the glitter. I don't know specifically what it is, but there are chunky glitters that if I was doing, you know, using it for this kind of a method and I put the epoxy on, the epoxy will repel against that glitter, okay? You don't know it's going to happen until it happens, and then you're sad and angry and you're swearing and throwing things. It will repel to where it's not, you're putting it on, you know, completely even, and then you can literally watch it just pull away, and it'll pool in some areas and you'll have naked glitter in other areas, and it is a freaking nightmare to A, fix, B, fix. So, you know what I'm saying? If you are working with if you're using a glitter for this process, if you see this video and you want to try one of your own and you use a glitter that you have never used, you know, adding it to as far as epoxy method, okay? Before you add your epoxy, hit your whole cup with spray sealer. Do I have glitter everywhere? Oh, I do. I'm like, well, looking at this, I'm like, I have a glitter everywhere. I digress. You know what? It's early. I haven't had coffee. Roll with me on this. Anyway, just hit your cup with spray sealer, okay? It's going to combat that. And like I said, there's no way of knowing what glitter is going to do it and what isn't until it happens. So if it's a glitter and an epoxy method combo you're not familiar with, hedge your bets, hit it with spray sealer. Mix up approximately 30 mLs of your epoxy, and with a gloved hand, apply it to your cup. Don't forget to use your torch and blow out the microbubbles. Okay, so now we're going to move to the alcohol ink portion of the program, and just a couple of things before we do that. Not everybody's setup is the same. If you are working on a single cup spinner that you obviously can pick up and move around, you know, awesome. You can literally pick up the entire spinner and move it. I've done that. Make sure that your foamy insert thing is really tight though, or else you will pick it up and do this and your cup will fall off and then you'll be sad. And I've done that too. Me, myself, I have 40 cup spinners, okay? And of the 40 that I have, 3 can still be taken off like this, okay? We are not judging. No judging, family. No judging. I am a notoriously, I am feral when it comes to slinging epoxy, or at least I used to be. I'm kind of calm about it now. But back in the day, you know, at one point we had a tsunami of sales. It's what we refer to it as a tsunami. Etsy promoted my Salty Beachy cup when it came out, and like literally almost overnight I had 1,300 sales, all with a 2-week turnaround. And I think I had, I don't know, 6 spinners at the time. Never heard of fast set. At that point, it was cowboy on. I was slinging epoxy everywhere because I was moving at the speed of light. So a lot of these spinners, obviously, I can't take the arms off because I have at some point epoxied them. Oh well, I still have 3, so I still feel like I'm winning. What I'm saying all this for is this: if you are somebody who can take your arms off of your spinner, okay, again, make sure that your foam insert is tight in your cup, because I'm not joking, I've done that. I've sat there, taken it off, put it upside down, and the cup and the epoxy and the ink went flying across my garage floor, which is also why I'll be paying money when I move at some point to sand down this floor. Another thing is my spinners, when I, hold on a minute, come out. All right, so my spinners, when I put this on, these are very short arms. When I put this on, okay, and I jimmy jam it on there, this is all I have to work with in regards to unscrewing and screwing back on, okay, which is why they're probably all, you know, epoxied on. So just imagine, if you will, here we are, this is wet epoxy, I'm leaning over trying to do this to screw it and screw it back on, and you can already see what's happening here. I'm going to go ahead and drag my thumb through the epoxy. I'm going to get epoxy on this, which is why this, the rest of them are all screwed on and can't come off. I'm going to get ink, you know what I mean? Like, this is a train wreck waiting to happen. To hedge your bets on that, if you have little shorty arms, okay, you have your insert there, grab another insert. And if your inserts are like mine and they're well used and well loved, chances are, even just by popping it in, it's going halfway down. If you sit there and pop that in, now you've got like 2.5, 3 inches of play that you hopefully, you know, won't mess up your cup and get, you know, epoxy on yourself. Obviously, you touch your cup, you mess up your ink. Okay, we can fix that. That's not a big deal. But now you're walking around like me with epoxy on our hands. Now we're going to not pay attention. We're going to wipe it on our pants. We're going to touch stuff. Okay, we're going to pet the dog. Done that too. Okay, so just kind of the double insert is just a really easy way to kind of give yourself a little more real estate when it comes to the end of your arm if you know, have very short, you know, spinner arms. So enough of that. Next, let's talk about colors. I know it's kind of hard to see because it's all sanded down, but trust me, this color is beautiful, beautiful. So what we're going to do is, the inks that we're going to add on there, like I said before, I am not a pink and purple person. I am not a ginormous fan. I love pink, I love purple. I'm not a combined effort person on those two colors, except for this cup. So what we're going to do is we are going to add, I'm going to show you my purples, okay? And then we're going to go ahead and get started, and we'll see how it turns out. For our lineup, we need white, okay? So white's a given. We're also using black. My normal black is, I left the cap off and it's completely sludgy, so we're going to use a little baby black here. We have fuchsia, okay, which is a really pretty color. We have, what does this say? Cool Perry, which is like a light purple. And we are also going to use purple twilight. Now, if you have any colors close to these, okay, like, don't waste your money going and buying like the exact colors if you have something comparable, okay? Like purple twilight's comparable to, what is this? Comparable to, I don't know what that says. Passion purple? Sure. Like your quintessential, like, everyday purple. You know, if you have a light purple, this fuchsia comes out like, you know how like fuchsia gets named different things. Comes out like a fuchsia, magenta-y color. The other color is, well, yeah, black and white. So, you know what I mean? Like, don't go out and, like, you know, spend the money if you don't have to. If you have colors that are really close to these, you know, you want to get the exact colors, go for it. The link is down in the description box for this video. But like I said, if you don't need to, why spend the money? Anyway, we are going to go get started now, okay? One more thing. I'm back. Sorry. One more thing. Okay, so I also feel like we need to talk real quick about the ink that we're adding here. The plan is this, so you can follow along with what I'm doing. The plan is this. I have learned the hard way that more ink is not always better, because we have this gorgeous glitter base. If you drown this in ink, okay, if you think that you need, you know, so much ink to get this swirl effect, what's going to happen is you're going to have a great swirl effect, but you're never going to be able to see that glitter, okay? You might see, you know, the shimmer shine through the ink in areas, but it's going to be very, your glitter's not going to be the glitter color you're putting on there. It's going to be the color showing up through the colored ink. So you're going to see, and it's so, you know, it's one of those things you got to practice at it. I've done a billion of these, and I still have to like rein myself in because I'm all like, here, let's put all the ink, all the ink, all the ink, and then I sit there and swirl, and I'm like, okay, well, the glitter's there somewhere. You want to be very, you want to walk a line. You don't want too much ink, you don't want too little ink. So less is more. You can always add, okay? You can add to this epoxy layer. You can run it, let it swirl out, not like it. The next epoxy, you can do another thin coat of epoxy and then add more ink in areas if you find that there's areas that are missing. But like I said, you less is more, but you obviously still want it to have a presence. So when you watch me doing this, you're gonna see I don't drown this in ink. I put quite a bit on, but I don't drown it. So just something to kind of keep in the back of your head if you decide to do this. I keep bouncing, you guys, sorry. All right, you want to add a decent, trying to hold my camera here, a decent layer of epoxy. You don't want it super thin. You also don't want it super thick. You're not trying to drown it, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you have enough epoxy to where you can get that movement that you need. Get the bottom. I usually add just a little bit extra, just to be on the safe side. I don't add these in any particular order. I'm going to start with the fuchsia, and I add just a couple of drops. Keep in mind, like, you're adding, you know, 5 other colors or so, so you're not trying to, you know, kill anything at this point. And then just kind of go through with the next color. And you can see how little I'm really actually adding, because this is kind of like a little layered technique. You're going to add all these colors. You can blend them, or I should say add them on top of each other. That's fine. And then, okay, you're going to add white and add a little bit more color. Now this is black. I go, oopsie. I don't try to use a ton. As much as I do love it, it will take over the cup in a heartbeat. So like that. Now, I'm going to go back through and add, oops. I'm going to go back through and just add a little bit of white on these spots. Oops, that was a little too much. Be mindful of how your colors come out. And then I'm going to go back in and add a little more here and there of each of those colors. Let's do one right there. And we can always go back through and add more of this or that as we feel it is necessary. So that's what it looks like in this moment. Actually, hold on, as I'm rolling through here, I'm going to add just a little bit right there. And And please don't think for one second like this is like a planned thing where I'm like, okay, well, I've got to add one here and here and here and here. It's not. This is just kind of me looking at it and be like, I want this here, this here, this here. So I'm going to flip the camera up, and then we are going to go ahead and go ahead and get this going. This is our cup. This is our torch. I'm going to try to do this. I wonder how to do this. All right, you know what? We'll just come up here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is lightly hit this with the torch, okay? Nothing crazy. Just a couple little bursts to get the ink moving, okay? You see? Ah, maybe I should do it this way. Maybe this will work. This will work better, okay. So I am just kind of hitting it just a little bit. Even though I also know, come on. My torch is so temperamental when I do this. And then lightly spin. And even though I know, like, my spinner insert on the inside is pretty solid and secure, I still kind of, like, spread my fingers inside the cup, so I'm kind of being sure to hold that too. Come on. And then I just slowly start spinning the cup. And kind of try to hit all of those little ink all of those little ink splotches. And do this in a way that the ink is moving and blending and going up and going down. You're not trying to keep all this going in like one particular direction. You want to move it up. You want to move it down. You want to move it all around. Oops, got a little too hot right there. That's okay. It'll. Okay. And now I'm going to give this just a minute. Now, while this is kind of getting its little mojo going, I'm going to go ahead and kind of keep chipping up and down because our epoxy is warm, extremely warm, because we've been firing it up. So it's still very movable at this point. It's got a lot of movement. I'm not trying to let this just stand in one space because it's going to all flow in that direction. So I want to make sure that our design is cohesive and that it's up, down, all around. Okay, so this is what it's looking like. I'm going to get this back on the spinner. Alright, so the colors are blending beautifully. That's going to swirl out really nice, and you can still see a ton of that glitter, through all of the ink drops. And that's what we want. We don't want it to be completely overtaken by the ink. So now we are going to go ahead and let this bad boy spin and work all its magic. Hey guys, what's up? We're doing ink swirls today. Oh, I love ink swirls. I am going to be honest, these are very easy to do once you get your vibe going on. When I first started doing these, mine were horrific in all ways you can imagine. Horrible. So I am here to share with you all of the little things I've learned along the way so that you can definitely make these as pretty as possible the first time around. They're not hard. They're really not. It's just, how do I say this? It takes like a minute or two to get your mojo going. Unless you were kind of one of those amazing goddesses that was born with like the ink swirling voodoo gene, and you do it once and you're like, ta-da, and it's amazing. Okay, mine were not amazing. These take a minute to kind of learn like how far to push things and when to back off. And then once you get that, man, you're making 100 of these a day. These are so much fun. And the color combinations that you can roll with on these, Lord have mercy. I am not, like I said in the video, I am not a pink and purple person. I just am not. There's nothing wrong with it. I love pink. I love purple. Not always a huge fan of them intermixed together. You would think I would be, but it's just not like my favorite color combination. Until now. Oh, I absolutely love this. I had a customer who ordered these kind of colors, and I just fell in love with her cup so much by the end. Like I had to put it in the store, I have to make a video on it. So this, like I said, this is definitely a color combo that I am a fan of in this particular instance, but you can do so much. Like you can literally just combine anything as far as colors go. Keep in mind though, if you are going to combine like contrasting colors, you know, kind of keep in mind how those colors are going to swirl together. Case in point, like blue and yellow. I've had customers who've been like, oh, I want to, you know, what was it? Was it a school? Maybe it was a school, or just her favorite colors. I don't remember which. But she wanted a swirl cup with like blue and yellow. Well, if you mix blue and yellow, you're going to get green. Now you've got a blue, yellow, green cup. So, you know, I had to do the swirls in like different layers. Like I did a blue swirl and I let that cure, and then I did a yellow swirl on top of it. Those are not my favorite. I am not teaching a tutorial on those at this point because those kind of have a tendency to jam me up sometimes. So we'll see down the road. We'll see about that. But today, oh, can I just show it to you again? Oh, I love this cup. Now listen, all right, so let's go through a couple of tips and tricks. So we'll be here for 4 hours. And I can see as I'm recording this, like I have like all these little sparkles because I worked this morning. So I'm a little sparkly, a little ratchet, you know, whatever. I'm caffeinated. That's really all that matters, to be honest with you. When it comes to your base coat, it really doesn't matter. On most things. Now, obviously, if you are going to be laying down black glitter, you know, for a base, spray paint black, you know what I mean? But if you're doing something, I mean, honestly, your go-to can always be white. That's really not a big deal. And there's, you know, there's so much going on with this cup that if you're using a white base and say you're using a hot pink glitter, just make sure that you are obviously, you know, coating that glitter as much as possible, okay? If you're using like a chunky glitter like this and say you're doing a white base and it's a dark hot pink, and you know, you notice after you do one run that there's a lot of white still showing, you know, one thing to combat that is if you had put down, say, if you're using a white base, you're going with a darker color as far as your glitter going, I would say add, kind of do a half and half thing. Obviously, most of this is covered, or a good chunk of it is covered with the ink. I would lay down a fine glitter, not full, like don't go ham on it. Just sprinkle the fine glitter over pretty much, you know, like very lightly over the whole cup, and then use your chunky on top of it, because that fine is going to fill in a lot of those blanks. And as long as you don't go real heavy with the fine, you're still going to be able to add that chunky, and the chunky is still going to stick with your epoxy and roll through. You could also, if you wanted, add full coverage fine glitter, let that cure out, add another micro thin layer on top of your epoxy, and then add chunky, so you have 2 layers of glitter. Be careful with that though, because these can get really fat real fast. You know, it's one of those things where it's like micro thin layers of epoxy. Well, when you're working with, you know, fat chunky glitter and swirls and this and that, you know, like I said, it can get fat real fast. So, you know, kind of, you know, keep that in mind when you're doing your glitter layers. When it comes to the second run of epoxy, I don't need this glitter before I add the ink to it. I don't need this glitter super, we're not talking like a finished cup perfect. We really aren't. I don't want huge mountains of boinky glitter sticking up, because when you swirl, it's going to hiccup on that and move on. And you're going to, when you know, you get to the point where you sand that, you're going to see where it was like, oh, it swirled so perfectly. Hiccup. You know what I mean? Like, it's, oh, it swerved to the left and it came back. But it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be like where if you rub your hand on it, you're not, you know what I mean? Like you're not getting blasted with a bunch of chunky glitter. So definitely you're going to do 1 coat of epoxy after you add your glitter, depending on the type of glitter you're using. You know, some glitters are harder, some glitters are softer, some are, you know, less chunky, more chunky. So depending on what you're using, you may need to do a second coat of epoxy. What did I do? I did 2. I had to think about that. I did 1 seal coat over on top of it, and then I did another thin layer of epoxy, just so, like I said, it didn't need to be perfect, but it definitely needs to be able to, you know, you need to be able to sand down and then add your ink. And you'll see in the video where I just kind of like did a quick sand on basically 90% of the cup. I'm not horribly worried about this edge if the glitter is, you know, not 1000% smooth. The edges you kind of want to be mindful of, simply because as you roll your ink and you put on your seal coat for the ink, if you have like really jagged edge at the bottom and you're like, let me go sand that down, you're also running the risk of sand, 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 and then you look and your ink is gone right around that edge. So kind of be mindful of that. Be sure to sand down your edge if you need to, you know, before you add your ink. And when it comes to the bottoms, let's talk about that real quick while we're here. You can see where I added, you know, I glittered the bottom. If I am, like I said, it's one of those things that I know, like, glitter your bottom, but I also know there's some glitters that I've used that I don't have a corresponding fine glitter that's going to match. And those are the glitters that are like stupid chunky, stupid thick, just, you know, really hard to work with glitter sometimes. And I know that if I go ahead and bottom out with that glitter, it's going to add so much weight on that bottom. And then you're running into the risk of, okay, so you've got your glitter on the bottom. You're trying now to cover that bottom with your epoxy. Now you're trying to add the ink. I cannot tell you how many times between these and geodes are the cups where I will run into wobbles faster than anything. Simply because you have, you know, as you're rolling out your epoxy for especially for your swirl layer, okay, if your spinner is just a little bit off, just a little bit crooked, and mine are, like all of mine are, so I have to like really work to kind of keep, you know, things straight with them. That epoxy is going to, you know, obviously pull down. And especially if you're using fast set, if you are using like a regular, you know, what I'll call a slow set epoxy, you can come by in an hour and, you know, with a popsicle stick and, you know, kind of run it right down and take off any excess. But if you're working with fast set, you've got that long to do it. And if you're doing a swirl, it just complicates things. And if there's ever a downside of fast set, that's probably going to be it, in my opinion. Other than that, fast set is amazing and I love it. But moving on. So we are glittered. We are, you know, covered in epoxy. We have done the bottom. Okay. Let's get into the swirl. The swirls are the favorite part. Okay. When you are picking colors that are going to be going on over glitter, okay, you got to stop for a minute and make sure that the colors are going to work. Like I said, case in point, yellow and blue make green. So if you have chunky yellow glitter on here and then you add just say a blue swirl, be mindful that there are going to be places where it's going to appear green. Okay, the ink it swirls into different transparencies. So say you have something like a real section, it's like real blue, got all that blue in there. As that fades off, that transparency becomes more noticeable. So that blue over that yellow glitter is going to flash green, which would be beautiful. Like I have no problem with that. But the customer may, because you got to remember too, a lot of times people who are, well, I'm going to say majority of the times, these people are ordering cups, a lot of times have no idea how they're made. Like, or they think they know how they're made. But honestly, unless you went to art school or it's something you're familiar with, like you know, come up against these situations in a day-to-day in your daily life, most people are not going to stop and think that, oh, yellow glitter, blue ink, somewhere it's going to look green. And that's what they have you for. So that's something you've got to keep in mind when it comes to doing colors. Is that something that comes up every single cup? No, it's really not. But be mindful if things start getting, you know, you start getting these requests that are a little bit, you know, where you got to stop and think about it. That's not to say that the customer won't want you to do it, but it's definitely something you may want to make them aware of. Because, you know, I've had that before where, well, why is there green on this cup? Well, because yellow and blue make green. Well, I don't want that. Okay, well, this is how the world works. You know what I mean? Like you've got to be mindful of that. So just keep that in mind. your swirls. Let's talk about swirls. Okay, now you saw in the video, I did not add a crazy amount of ink. The ink that I added, okay, you can see, this is what it all swirled into. I am the biggest over inker in the whole world. I have had to learn so many times. I have a real bad habit of putting way too much ink on there, in my opinion, okay, to where I basically cover up all the pretty glitter. So I have to be very mindful and put a leash on myself. And as soon as I start saying, oh, we'll put a little bit more. No, we will not, Heather. We will not. We're going to stop right there and swirl what we have. So do not go crazy with your ink, okay? If you do, if you do, your cup will be beautiful. It'll be a beautiful ink swirl. You just won't be able to see the details of the glitter underneath. But, you know, it's one of those things that I think for every person, you've got to just find your sweet spot on that and your personal preference. So when it comes to these cups, I find like the first one or two, let's say the first couple you're going to do, could possibly be considered practice cups. I feel like once you get your hands in there and start, you know, applying the process, that's when you're going to be like on your next cup, be like, oh, I added a little too little glitter or too little ink. Oh, I added a little too much ink. Oh, I did this. I got it too hot. It swirled too hard. You know what I mean? So be forgiving and give yourself some grace on the first couple that you do if you're not completely in love with them. They do, in my opinion, they do take a couple to kind of find your rhythm on. Once you do that, because it's real easy to watch a video and be like, you know, I'm sitting here going, yeah, just do this, just do this, just do this. And then you do it and you're like, well, that didn't work out at all. You've got to figure out how much heat you're adding. You've got to figure out how much, you know, back and forth you're going to swirl. You know, hopefully you could see in the video where like I've got it upside down and then I'm kind of micro turning and I'm doing, you know what I mean? Like it's not just up, down, you know what I mean? Like you're trying to move it all about. So, you know, one of those things that you've got to do is just kind of jump in and practice. So if you've never done this before, grab a couple trash cups, you know what I mean? Like a couple that are sitting in your garage because they got a dent or you dropped them and they shake or whatever. And like I said, just kind of start there and perfect your process because it's going to be, you know, individual. It's for every individual. Everybody's going to have their own way of doing this. When it comes to the ink swirl, okay, like I said, you saw I didn't put a ton of ink on here. Adding the white on top, okay, and then adding a color on top of that again, to me, works best for my preference. I like how that turns out, okay? I like that they all kind of swirl together, you know, and you can see this, you know, you've got the light purple, you've got my nails look so bad. I was working this morning, sorry. You know, but you see what I'm saying? Like you've got all those different colors. It's just not like purple and white swirl. You got purple, white, darker purple, a little bit of black. So kind of, you definitely have fun with that, but just kind of, you know, like I said, be mindful of how much ink you're putting on the cup. If you do put too much ink, if you do, okay, you can take some off. Now I will say, I've done it. Like I said, any mistake, I've done it. I have completely put way too much ink on a cup, swirled it out, and then you couldn't see any of the glitter. And like the customer was just like, oh my God, I love this glitter so much. And I just want so much on my cup and blah, 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 blah. If you do that, okay, you can, after swearing extensively, make sure you have gloves on, grab a paper towel, and then very slowly and very delicately and very carefully, you know, take your paper towel and just start taking off some of that ink, okay? It's gonna keep rolling. Take your paper towel again, you know, try to create little areas where you can see that ink, and then take your torch when you're happy and you've got places of ink, places of glitter, take your torch and just lightly, like all around there, so that ink will kind of haze out a little bit, so it doesn't look like you took a paper towel and took off the ink. That's the best you can do with that, unless it's completely, and then start all over again. So it's, you know, it's one of those things that it's easy for that ink to get away from you. And hopefully you could see too in the video where I'm torching, okay, I am literally torch off, and I'm letting that get just hot enough so that it's to kind of starts, you know, moving around a little bit. And that's when you're going to start moving, and torch, put it back upside down, torch, okay? Do not sit there and torch, because you will set your, you'll number one, you will absolutely singe or fry, however you want to say it, your epoxy, okay? If you have too little epoxy on your cup especially, and you're like, heat, it will singe your epoxy. Is that a deal breaker? No, you can cover that. But at the same time, you're like, here we go. Now we're in fix it mode. So when you are going at your cup with your torch, very lightly, you don't need to be standing back here with it, okay? You can see, I got close to it, but you're on, off, okay? If you go too hard, too long, it's gonna singe it, and you're gonna like be trying to fix that. Another thing is, if you are going too hard, too long on with your torch, your epoxy is going to turn to water, or I should say the consistency of water. And next thing you know, you are just hard swirling. Like, you know, there is no, oh, look at this delicate little swirl action we have going. No, your epoxy is running at that point. And do I want to say there's a way to fix that? Not really, kinda. It's one of those things you're gonna have to just kind of keep moving it around, okay? So it's not just in rivets running, you know, horizontal across your cup. But that one may be a deal breaker. Like I've had to do that too, where I've literally heated it all up so hard that it doesn't lightly move, it just literally runs. And again, paper towel, wipe it all off, okay? If that happens to you, it is totally okay to wipe your ink and your epoxy off. All right, just make sure you get 98% of it. You know what I'm saying? If that happens to you, if you are working on your swirl and it gets too hot, if it starts running, if it starts getting muddy, if you're like, well, this absolutely sucks and you're not happy, grab a big old roll of paper towels, put your gloves on, and you can literally just start taken all of that epoxy, all of that ink off. Obviously, when it, you know, like the minute you put it on there and you realize that it's not what it's, you know, not coming out to what you want it to be. You can't do that an hour in, okay, and be like, I'm not liking that, I'm gonna go ahead and take that off, because at that point it's too late. But if you put your epoxy down, put your ink down, and it's just not, it's not working, it's not saving, you're not gonna save it, there's nothing you can do about it, grab your paper towels, take it all off. And then just let it run. And like I said, make sure you get as much of that ink off as you possibly can. Let it run, let it cure, and then you can go back. You're not, the cup's not trash, your glitter is fine. You can go back on the next round, put another layer of epoxy on, figure out what it is that you did that maybe didn't work for you, and try it again. Okay, there's no reason to start a whole brand new cup as long as you get all of that ink off, or the majority of it. Like honestly, if there's a couple little wisps, I mean, like, I'm not worried about that. You do you on that one though. And when it comes to adding the epoxy, let me say this. It's one of those things that's so hard in these videos to explain how much epoxy you need for some of these processes. You know, I'm saying 30 mLs of epoxy, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, do you want a little bit extra? So you need to make sure you're not trying to do, when you're adding your ink swirl, you're not trying to do a thin coat of epoxy. You're not trying to do a micro, you know, layer of epoxy, because the swirl needs to happen because the epoxy has the ability to move. So you're not like drowning this. You're not trying to put like 60 mLs of epoxy on this thing, but let's say a healthy 30 mLs, okay? A little bit extra is not bad, okay? Especially if you are being very mindful of your earlier layers of epoxy where they were very thin. You know, you got to keep in mind too, am I putting a decal on this? Am I putting an offset decal on this? You know what I mean? So you got to kind of think ahead a little bit. How much more do I have to work on this cup? But again, you want the magic of the swirl comes from the epoxy moving. So you need to make sure you have enough epoxy on this cup for that swirl to be able to move appropriately, okay? If you do not have enough epoxy on your cup and you start hitting it with the torch and you're swirling it all around, back to that whole frying your epoxy, it'll happen. It will happen. It'll happen much, okay, let me say this. It's much more likely it's going to happen if you have too thin of a layer of epoxy on your cup. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. What happens if you do fry it? I have set cups on fire. I had a really bad week a couple weeks ago. It was like the anniversary of us losing our dog, and it wasn't a good day. It never is. I set 2 cups on fire that day because of not having enough epoxy on there. So just like I said, be mindful. If you do set your cup on fire, step away a little bit and blow. When it comes to setting your cup on fire and you're using a torch, is it possible? Yes. Let's talk about how not to make that happen. There's a very delicate little balance when it comes to torching and alcohol ink. All right, common sense tells us that that's not a good combination, that things are going to set on fire. And if you're not careful and if your timing is off, it could. So definitely just kind of be mindful of that. You can, if you're afraid of using a torch, you can use a heat gun. Now, the only thing with using a heat gun is this. You're not able to hit just that part right of the swirl right there and this little spot right here and this little spot right here. Okay, a heat gun, you're hitting there, there, there. So that's why I use a torch, because I can kind of pinpoint those heat bursts a little bit better. When I first started, doing tumblers, it was like, grab a torch. I'm like, I'm not working with a torch. Are you out of your mind? Like, I know me. I can't possibly work with a torch. Bad things are going to happen. You can. So don't be afraid, but you do need to be respectful and mindful of said torch, okay? When it comes to adding your ink, hopefully you could see in the video, I added all my ink. I let it swirl a little bit. Then I went at it with the torch. There was, I think, one spot. Was there one spot? There was one spot where I added a little more white, okay? And, when you add your ink, let it do its thing for a minute, okay? It's like creme brulee or bananas Foster, okay? If you hit it with the heat right after that alcohol is added, it's gonna light on fire. So adding your alcohol ink, letting it swirl for a minute, not a minute, but you know what I mean? Letting it swirl, get comfortable with itself, and then use the torch on it. If you add your ink and immediately start torching, you've got bananas Foster, okay? You're gonna let the thing on fire. If you do that, like I said, make sure you don't get your hair or your face anywhere close, and just lightly blow and it'll extinguish itself. But let's try to avoid the fire. If you are somebody that knows your own track record, like me, it's not completely, irresponsible to have a fire extinguisher nearby, but I joke, honestly. Can you set them on fire? Absolutely. Are you going to? Probably not. You're probably a little bit more mindful than me. So be careful with your torch. Be respectful of it. Make sure your alcohol ink is down for, we're not talking for a long period of time, but just enough to kind of like roll through once or twice, and you should be fine and good to go. If you are working on a single spinner, okay, and you, like you've seen my racks, okay, I don't know if that came out right. Sorry if it didn't. If you are working on a single spinner, okay, you don't have to take that rod off your spinner. You can literally pick your spinner up, the whole thing, and just do this. I used to do that once upon a time. Just make sure that your insert is very tight in the cup, because your cup will fall off if it's not. I've done that too. So just be mindful of that. One thing that has happened to me that I feel like I need to make mention of is this. If you are trying too hard with your swirl, and this is what I mean by that. If you can see here where things are like, this just kind of like swirled out really pretty. If you have added too much epoxy, too much ink, okay, now you've got it up and down, you're heating up, you heated it up just a little too much. This is like, picture this like the tsunami of all things wrong, okay? You've got too much epoxy, you put too much ink, you are trying too hard to swirl it, okay? you will end up with, see how these are all like nice and sweet and calm and, you know, even. I've had cups where the swirl swirled so hard it became its own ridge, okay? To where it literally, can you hear my dog? If you can, I apologize. She's got dementia, she barks, I can't do anything about that. She's 14 and she's sassy and she doesn't care that I'm doing a video, so. And may I also say, there's no reason for her to be barking. She's fed. There's nobody at the door. There's nobody walking outside. That's just her. So I apologize. But anyway, I've swirled these so much to where the epoxy has started pooling. Okay. And it could also be too, if you're using fast set, you know, you've got this long to work with it. So if you wait a little too long to where your epoxy is starting to get into that stage where you're like, we got to start moving a little faster. That can also create where the swirl is more like a ridge almost. It may look absolutely beautiful, but the problem is it's so raised up that you have to add so many coats of epoxy to rise up to it because the negative space is lower. Those are kind of a nightmare. You know, it's one of those things that you're adding multiple layers of epoxy to try to make the cup even so you don't feel like that ridge. The problem is, you know, you're having to add 2-3 runs of epoxy. Now you're trying to sand it down to make it even. If you sand too hard, like if you break out the electric sander like I use, if you sand too hard, you're going to sand right down into that ink. So kind of, you know, if that happens to you, it doesn't happen really very often. It's kind of, like I said, the perfect tsunami storm of crap. If that happens, consider whether or not it's just easier for you to start a new cup on that one, in that instance. Because to bring all of that negative space up to the level of the top of that ridge of ink, we're talking, you know, 3-4, you know, runs of epoxy sometimes. And like I said, even then sanding it down, sometimes it doesn't fix it. So kind of, that's the only time I can honestly say you're almost better off just starting a new cup if that happens. And if it happens, consider it a learning experience. You know what I mean? What did I do to get to this place? Oh, I did this a little too hard. Oh, I ran this a little too hard. You know, if you make a mistake doing an ink swirl, the best thing I can say is learn something from it. Not all mistakes are bad mistakes. You know what I mean? Learn from it so that your next one, you're going to do better and you're not going to have the same situation. Okay. I think that's kind of it. Obviously, when you're done with your swirl, let it, you know, let it flow. Keep in mind too, depending on what kind of epoxy you are using, like fast set, you know, once you're locked in, you're locked in. It's going to lock in real fast. With your, if you're using not fast set, if you're using like regular, you know, or slow set epoxy, you have time. Those come out so pretty too, because they have more time to swirl and get to know each other. Okay. The ink has a lot more time to, you know, work its mojo. So like I said, there's never a wrong answer, but the slow set ones, they come out absolutely beautiful. I think that pretty much takes care of everything. Like these are so much fun. I mean, like I said, take your time, use your torch respectfully. Don't get it too hot. Don't get too close. Don't catch your cup on fire. But yeah, they're a lot of fun. So definitely go to give them a try. If you're new to the page, do not forget to, well, if you're new to the page, thanks for staying with me for all of my rambling, but also don't forget to check out the community tab on the Wicked Whiskey Design actual, you know, channel page. That is where I have all of the Amazon products that I use on the regular. Obviously, anything I use for a particular cup, I have listed down below in the description box, but the community tab is kind of where I have a lot of just like the Amazon items. I get asked a lot, like, where did you get your glitter shelves? You know, what vinyl do you use for this? What do you use for that? So that way it's just kind of there. It's a lot easier to find everything all in one spot. And it's kind of my fake little Amazon storefront, at least for now. So definitely check that out. They are affiliate links, so if you do purchase anything from there, I make like 5 cents, or like this morning, $2.30, but it's okay. I don't really care about that part. It's just an easy place to have everything there in one spot. I appreciate you guys. I hope you have fun with these. If you do one of these, tag me. I love when you guys tag me, and I appreciate the ones who have. So I love seeing what you guys do. If you are in any way inspired by any of these videos, please tag me, because I really would love to see your work. And I think that pretty much wraps everything up. So I'm going to go ahead and get going. Thanks for hanging out. Have a great week. I'll see you next time.